All right.
There we go.
Now it works. Welcome, everyone. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This is Ibrahim from Product Folks. We're very excited today to have Yahya give us a session about the essential of strategy. I'm going to start off just a couple of minutes to tell you just 2 minutes about Product Folks. I won't take a lot of time, and then we can hand it off to Yahya. I'm gonna just share my screen real quick. All right. So we're a community based out of Amman to serve the Middle East. We've started since 2016. We have done a lot of like talks, workshops, and panels. More than 10,000 attendees and more than 2,000 active members. We have a Facebook group, and recently we launched our Slack community. So you're more than welcome to join us there. We do a lot of paid services as well for like startups, incubator, accelerators, as you can see. And also we work with the conferences and events like Expand. Here is our Slack community. I sent already on the chat the link. You can scan it here or you can join it on the link. We're gonna soon, inshallah, have a program for career coaching and career change. So be sure to be there. And lastly, this is our WhatsApp community if you're interested. And this is our LinkedIn page. Happy to have you all there. And that's it. I don't want to take a lot of time from you. And then I'm gonna unpin myself, and I can do like a little intro. Yani Yahya definitely will do like do a special intro for himself at the beginning, but we're very happy to have Yahya with us. He worked before with Wazzaf and Dubuzel, and right now he's a senior PM at Huddle Statbomb. So today we're going to talk about the essential of strategy, and I'm going to leave it for Yahya. Thank you very much, Yahya.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Okay, let's get the technical stuff out of the way. So I'll share my screen. One note: when I share the presentation, I will not be able to see any chat messages, or if you're raising your hand for a question. I think it will be best if we keep the questions until the end of the presentation, just so we have a nice flow for the session. So
Amazing.
I will share the presentation now, and I would appreciate if you can tell me if you see the title slide.
Right now we see your picture, Yahya.
Okay, so we're having the same issue again.
If you do a share screen, I think it would be better.
Okay, I did, and it didn't. It got me out. Okay, let's try again. Okay. Are you seeing anything?
Right now, your picture. I'm not sure if it's only my side. You guys can confirm. Only the picture of Yahya, right?
How about now? I think something changed. Maybe not. No?
Okay, now a background. Great.
Okay, so I guess there's some lag.
All right. Thank you, Yahya.
Okay, perfect. Okay, again, one more note before I start. This will be in English. As I was telling Ibrahim before most of you joined, لو كلمت عربي دي مش هتكون session informative, هتكون comedy, because my Arabic is quite broken. I am Egyptian American. I spent most of my life actually for America. I learned actually to speak Arabic much later. Um, Tariq works with me at Huddle, and he can verify what I'm saying. However, I will try my best. If there are questions at the end and you prefer Arabic, I will try my best. So with that out of the way, hello everybody. I'm Yahya Hassan. I'm Senior Product Manager at Huddle. I've been with Huddle for the last 4.5 years. It's the longest I've been as an employee working in product management. My path to product management has not been traditional. Um, I got into it uh, while I was working actually in the construction industry in Doha. Um, I was working on mega construction project related to the World Cup, which was interesting. It was also something quite new to me at the time, but after a while, it became a bit repetitive, and I couldn't really do a lot of the creative things that I wanted to do. And so I got into it like many people who are interested in tech. I started a tech startup. Now, at the time, I didn't know much about product management, but I realized pretty quickly that's what I was doing in my startup. Um, and over the past 8+ years working in product, I've learned that a lot of success comes down to choosing the right thing to do at the right time. And that's why I chose this topic of strategy to talk to you about. So today we'll explore the essentials of strategy and go through a case that I've put together, a fictional case, to help put some color to some of the theory that I'm going to present to you. So let's get started. Strategy isn't about finding a risk-free path forward. Sometimes you'll hear that strategy is about de-risking. Strategy is about making calculated bets, and you'll hear me use this word bets throughout this presentation. I'm not using it in so much as a gambling context, but in a way to frame that despite being prepared and um, being data driven or data informed, at the end of the day, there are factors that are out of our control that can influence the success or failure of what we want to do. So it's about making calculated bets based on careful analysis and understanding of your context. So every major decision, every big innovative leap or market entry involves some uncertainty that we just can't fill in all of the gaps. Trying to eliminate all risks is not possible, and that's not our job as product managers. Our job is to intelligently manage and select which risks to take. And so this means making hard choices, saying no to good opportunities to focus on potentially even great ones, and investing resources in uncertain but promising directions. So in essence, strategy is about increasing our odds of success while accepting that certainty is never guaranteed. This quote from Roger L. Martin is probably my favorite quote about strategy because of how succinct it is and how it gets to the root about what strategy is about. And it comes from his book, Playing to Win, How Strategy Really Works. He's one of the uh, most well-known people in sort of that strategy industry. So now I want to share with you a couple of stories that highlight success because of the choices made by the leaders of these organizations. Now, I'm going to go back a little bit, so now I'm showing my age, but I find this particular time in Apple's history quite revealing and also it really sets up for sort of the uh, phase that we're in. So, did you know that in 1997, Apple was on the verge of bankruptcy? Now, at the time, Windows operating system, they had just come out with a new one, and it had dealt a really tough blow to Apple's market share. The company was losing a lot of money at the time. They didn't really have a solid direction, not like, the Apple of today, or even better when they were better positioned maybe 10 years ago. And they're really running out of time. So in September of 1997, Steve Jobs came back to Apple. He had left prior to that. And at that time, he became the interim CEO. Now, what happened next would really become an amazing turnaround story. So when he came back to Apple in 1997, he didn't just come and make incremental changes. He basically reinvented the company. He had a very simple strategy, but it was brilliant in its execution, and that's why it worked. The first thing that Steve Jobs did was he slashed Apple's product line. At that time, they had 15 desktop models to just one. I had a friend who had one, and I was always envious because they were pretty neat compared to some of those early PCs. The message was clear, though. Do viewer things, but do them exceptionally well. He didn't just stop at the computers. He got rid of all of the other things that they were producing as well. Printers, peripheral tools, even other software projects that were happening at that time. He eliminated all of those. He also eliminated distribution deals with 5 of Apple's 6 national retailers. At that time, they weren't selling directly, which we'll get to in a moment. So he just wasn't cutting, though. What he was doing was also learning from the big tech companies that were thriving at the time. So from Microsoft, who was basically their main competitor, he actually secured money, $150 million investment, and turned them into an ally. And then the other big computer manufacturer at the time was Dell. And what they were really good at was their supply chain efficiency. They were basically the first to crack the code of getting all of their parts from Asia to reduce the cost of their end product. And so he borrowed that playbook as well. Then came the move to direct sales. This is where they launched the Apple Store, or Apple's online store, the very first time that they did it. And they decided to bypass traditional distributors completely. So this wasn't just about selling products. The vision here for the Apple Store, and you can see it obviously now, was controlling the entire customer experience. And this sort of theme has basically been present in Apple's mission throughout the decades. The impact of this new distribution channel really changed the future of e-commerce. The other thing Jobs did was he never promised to dominate the market when he came back. He realized Apple was a niche player, but he was also thinking about the next big thing. So he adopted a survive and focus approach. And he was patient. And his patience eventually paid off, and it paid off spectacularly. In the early 2000s, Apple released the iPod along with its online store iTunes, which the rest is history. That paved the way for the revolutionary iPhone. Switching gears a little bit, given I work in sports tech, Huddle is a sports tech and data company. I want to tell you another really interesting story from the world of sports. Okay, so there are going to be some terms I'll introduce here to help you understand if you're not that familiar with baseball. I'm not a really big fan of baseball, but this is sort of how the sports data and analytics industry actually got started. So it's quite interesting. And maybe some of you have seen the movie Moneyball. This is the guy who was the focus of that story and the book. Really, the book is really quite good. So the Oakland A's, which is a baseball team in the Major League Baseball of the U.S., in the late 1990s, early 2000s, they were really a small market team, and they had one of baseball's lowest payrolls. Um, they did not pay their players that much because they didn't have the budget. So they struggled to compete against the richest teams. Richest teams being one of them, the New York Yankees. At the time, they were spending over $100 million on their team and their players. The A's were spending around 30 million, right? So around a third of that. And year after year, they watched their best players get taken by the teams with money. And so the conventional wisdom was telling them, well, if you don't have money, you can't compete, period. You're just going to be a team that is playing the games and maybe you get lucky. So the management of the team, they really faced a very difficult question. How do you win games in a system where everything is against you in terms of finances? And the answer would come from really an unlikely source, which is this guy, a failed former player, used to play, he wasn't very good as a player, and he turned into a general manager. His name is Billy Beane. And he basically turned all of baseball's traditions upside down with a strategy that was data driven. So what did he do? Again, it's known as the Moneyball strategy. And the Moneyball strategy, a lot of people look at it and say, well, it's just about finding bargains, like good talent for less, right? Which is a skill in itself for sure. But it wasn't just about that. It was about completely reimagining how to evaluate baseball talent. Now, his approach was really revolutionary because it challenged basically a century of baseball strategy. Baseball is actually quite an old sport in the US, going on since the 1800s. And since that time, teams would evaluate players in the same exact way using the same exact metrics. So his question was, well, what if they were measuring the wrong things? This is actually an important question for any of us in product. You need to be measuring things, the right things that give us the right insights to make good decisions. And so that's what this sort of story centers on. So there's this guy named Bill James. Now, Bill James, he was an analyst who would watch these baseball games and sort of kept his own like statistics, like a nerd, right? And he argued that the stats that teams used were flawed. Bean came across James's ideas and he turned them into a system. What he did was, instead of chasing players using those old metrics, he found players who were good at getting in scoring position, no matter how they did it. So baseball is not actually a complicated sport. You have a player with the bat. If they hit the ball, then they have to run around the bases. And there's 3 bases and then the last one. If they come back to the last one, which is the 4th, it's called home, they score a point. It's called a run. So you want your players to get on the bases. If you hit the ball outside of the stadium entirely, that's called a home run, and that allows you to run across each base and come home and score a point immediately. Otherwise, you can basically take turns going around until you reach the home plate and score a point. So it pays to have people who can hit the ball well and get on the bases. to get into scoring position. Now, previously, all of the teams would look for the big players, the big hitter, the one who could really hit the ball far and get it out of the stadium, right? But that was something that cost a lot of money, and Billy Beane was adopting a different strategy. He was using, like I said, this strategy based on data. In fact, if you've read the book or seen the movie, he brought in financial analysts from Wall Street to create these models, and he treated baseball talent basically like a market where there are inefficiencies and we can exploit those inefficiencies. So you have a player that's ignored that does well to get in scoring position, but he's not that big. He's overlooked. He can't hit the ball outside of the stadium all the time. You can pay less for them, and they have value, right? Now, most of the teams and the analysts at the time, they thought his strategy was quite crazy. But while those teams were paying premium prices for the biggest hitters, he was building winning teams with players basically nobody else wanted. If you look at the graphs here that I have, so the top left, you see the x-axis shows payroll, how much these teams are paying, and that's in billions. So it starts from 500 million all the way up to 3 billion. Okay, so this is since 2000. So we're talking about basically up until, I think this data goes up to 2023, and a team's winning percentage. So you can see there's a positive correlation between how much money you have as a team and your winning percentage, how many games you win. See, Oakland is an outlier. They had one of the lowest payrolls in the league, and they were winning near the top of the entire league. And this is directly because of the Moneyball strategy. Similarly, on the right-hand side, see a graph. It says wins above or below payroll expectation by season. Basically, if your payroll is a certain amount, what is the number of wins that you are expected to win? And this is the Oakland A's, and it shows from 2000 to 2014, they were winning 16.3, 27.6, 27. They were winning well above their payroll's expectation with only 3 down years, those 3 bars that are red. So he proved that in baseball, just like in business, one of the keys to success is being smarter about the choices you make. And that is the fundamental point about good strategy. You have to make informed, data-driven or data-informed choices and have conviction with them. So I forgot that was okay. So for a strategy to have a chance to be effective, remember, there's no 100% way that it's going to be effective. But for a strategy to have a chance to be effective, it must answer these 4 questions. And this is now where we're going to get into sort of a framework that I've put together here. All right, so first, what does winning actually look like for us? This is about defining winning in concrete, meaningful terms. Now, a winning aspiration, right? That's the question we're asking. What is our winning aspiration? Goes beyond revenue. That's everybody's goal, to increase your MRR, ARR, your revenue. That's fine. That's certainly part of it. But what this answers is a deeper question of why we exist and what meaningful difference we want to make in our customers' lives. This becomes our guiding principle for which every strategic choice that follows is based on. You might see this in traditional like literature as your vision and your mission, which is basically the same things that you're addressing with answering these questions. The key here, though, is that these either mission or vision need to be actionable. They need to mean something. They shouldn't be vague statements like we're going to be the best X, right? Or we're going to be the Uber of whatever. Uh, it needs to have concrete descriptions of what you see as where you want to be, like in the long term, which is the vision aspect of it. And why do you exist? Why are you doing this? Okay. So the next question is, where will we play? And I've put in parentheses and not play. Those two go hand in hand and are crucial. The most dangerous words in strategy are some version of we want to be everything to everyone. And um, it's a mistake I see entrepreneurs make when they enter um, broadly rather than focused. You can't be everything to everyone. Every great strategy is as much about choosing where not to play as it is about where to compete. And each choice comes with trade-offs. So when we choose to focus on enterprise customers, we're intentionally saying no to small and medium businesses. They, in most cases, have varying needs and they have varying budgets. When we target specific verticals, we're deliberately saying, no, we're not going to work on others. And these aren't just marketing decisions, these are critical choices that shape everything from our product roadmap to our resource allocation. And the key here is to find a playing field where our unique capabilities can create the most value, where we can have the best chance to win. Amazon, they started by just selling books. They were a bookseller online. Similarly, again, I'm going to show my age. Facebook began with college students. They were not open to all users. And so if you were in that early group of university students, you could have a Facebook account. And it was much different back then, very, very different. But they nailed it with those initial audiences, those initial personas. And the same thing with Amazon. They got selling books right, which allowed them to move on to expanding their e-commerce business, which even today is not even the biggest part of their business. The point is their focus allowed them to really dominate their chosen space before they expanded. Now, once we've chosen our playing field, the next question is, how do we win there? All right. Winning means having a compelling answer to this question. Why should customers choose us over every other option available to them? This is where our value proposition needs to be specific, meaningful, and defensible. The latest example I can think of, because I like to play with what they call vibe coding these days, you have products like Lovable or Bolt.new or Replit. And each of those kind of does the same thing. You can go in there as a non-technical person, and with good prompts, you can essentially build prototypes of a lot of different applications. Simple applications, but if you can prompt it well enough, you can basically create what you want. But they don't really have a defensible moat yet. So one of the things is who got there first, like who started it first. The other one is basically marketing, right? So I've heard about all three. one way or the other, but I heard about bolt.new first, and then Replit, and then Lovable. At some point, though, if they want users to stick around and be retained, they are going to have their value prop be differentiated from the others. And this is what we're talking about here. So how do they win? Now these three can coexist. That's fine. But again, in a competitive environment, you have to keep iterating to be a step ahead. And your value prop has to be core to what your user is trying to do. So for us as product managers, we have to be, as I said, extremely clear about what makes our product uniquely valuable to our chosen customers. And I'll go back to my example with the vibe coding. Lovable does one thing better than those other two. They provide a backend. They've partnered with a company that basically does all of the, it's a simple backend, but it does the legwork for you. So you can deploy a database and a simple backend for your application. And so far, if I open up my browser and I'm going to do some vibe coding, I will open them up first because of that. So what distinctive capabilities or advantages do we have that others can't easily copy? That's so that example can be copied because it's a partnership. They didn't develop it themselves. So it is it's distinctive, but in the long term, it's not going to be good enough because it's easily copied. That's what is going to be a difference maker. And that connects really with what this next slide is talking about. Core capabilities. What are our core capabilities? They must directly connect to our how to win strategy. All right, and I'll give you an example from a non-product or a non-software product. If you're familiar with like animated movies like Moana or Frozen, I know I am because I have kids that age who are into that. Pixar is the company behind those, the animation studio. Their core capability is best in class animation. They're top. There are others who are similar, DreamWorks Studios, but if you think of like the best, it's Pixar for a very long period of time as well. So that's one, as well as their unique storytelling culture. They have made memorable movies. Okay. So this capability directly enables them to create movies or animated films that work for their main audience, children, but also the people who are going to take them there, the parents. Both of those two things are their core capabilities. Now, for PMs, this means being as clear as possible about what distinctive capabilities we need to invest in for our products. When we get to the case, I will be very specific about this. Now, in the sports data world, for example, having the highest quality of data is developed by investing in all of the necessary product and operational workflow features to make that outcome happen. And again, I'm going to touch on this in the case coming up, but this is just an example. All right, so now we've talked about the 4 components in this framework that we're going to call the strategy cascade, or I'm not going to call it. Roger Martin calls this the strategy cascade, where each of these choices flows into and reinforces the next choice. It's not a checklist that we have our vision, we have our mission, and okay, we're going to target these customers in this geo, and this is no. It is a cascade of interconnected decisions that build upon each other. So starting at the beginning, your winning aspiration sets the destination, where you want to be, right? In 5 or 10 years. Okay, it needs to be crystal clear. Where to play selects the field where you'll compete. How to win defines your game plan for that specific field. And your core capabilities are what you will build to execute that plan. If any of these levels does not align with the others, the strategy will fall apart. For example, you cannot win in enterprise software if your capabilities, technical, user experience, and so on are built for consumer apps. You can't aspire to be the market leader in something while playing in every possible segment with no distinctive advantage, at least not in the beginning. Your lack of focus will be the main reason you will fail. Every strategic choice must reinforce the others. That way, you create a coherent story of how you will succeed in the market. Now, while this entire cascade matters, how to win and core capabilities are where product strategy live, and sometimes where to play. But that would mean that you are a really empowered team where your management is also giving you some freedom to influence different markets and that choice. Our product decisions directly shape how we deliver value to our customers. So every feature, every workflow, every design choice must reinforce our winning proposition. So if we say we are a fintech trading platform, investing in trading, like in the stock market, we say we are going to create the simplest experience to make it easy for anybody to invest, although that's quite broad. Point is the simplicity. Yet we keep adding complex features, we are undermining our own strategy. So instead of focusing on very simple, easy to use experience, here's a stock, here's the price, I can buy it, I can sell it, we start adding in the beginning charts and advanced charts and signals and drawing. We are going in the wrong order uh, in terms of what we said how we are going to win. Okay. Our core capabilities determine what we can actually execute. So, for example, going back to Amazon, when they didn't have same day delivery from day one, right? But they could envision having same day delivery because they had built both the logistics capabilities to do it and had invested in the user experience and customer support necessary to have that be successful. And all of those have to work together. Otherwise, you have set a bar of expectations. And if you don't meet it, you have angry customers who will churn. You can see this again in quick commerce these days. Same capabilities as far as logistics goes, but also within the product and experience and customer support that makes them feel, which is important for customers. They end up feeling something that with every order, you are rushing to fulfill the delivery within that 20 minutes that they have promised, right? And this is why great product managers think beyond just the product itself. They try to shape the value proposition and the capabilities needed to deliver it. And a big part of that is really being customer centric and understanding what is the pain and what is your customer really trying to do. All right. So that is Martin's strategy cascade. Reforge is a really, really good resource that I always point people to when they want to learn more about strategy. They actually have some free, long form descriptions that detail what product strategy looks like and how it fits into a broader company strategy. And they call it their strategy stack. I find both frameworks really useful. And so I've actually combined both Reforge Strategy Stack and Martin's Strategy Cascade to further illustrate the points that I'm making. If you start at the top here, so on the table, in the first column, you see Reforge's naming conventions. So vision and mission, company strategy, and product roadmap. We've all, heard of these terms before. Within these definitions is where I've merged Martin's strategy cascade. And you'll notice the natural progression. We start with the big picture, which is similarly the winning aspiration that drives everything. This should cascade down to the company strategy, where Roger Martin's where to play and how to win choices come into focus. Right? And that's mostly with the CEO still, or leadership. From there, we zoom into product strategy, which focuses on how to win and core capabilities. That usually lives with CPOs, VPs, directors. If you're if you are in an empowered company, then your PMs will also be involved here. But in our region, I think that's less often the case. And finally, we get to the product roadmap, where I'm sure pretty much all of us live. And that is the tactical execution of these strategic choices. Each level has its own clear owners and time frame, as we can see. So the vision and mission can be indefinite, but realistically, 5 to 10 years, and it should be revisited periodically to ensure that it still makes sense. And then with the company strategy, that's something depending upon the company, 1 to 3 years. I think it's probably closer to 1 than it is to 3. Product strategy, we go further down. If company strategy is closer to 1, then you find often product strategy is revisited quarterly, right? If you're a company that does OKRs, then you're probably doing those quarterly as well. And then the roadmap fits in with that strategy. So some look at roadmaps every 3 months, every 6 months, depending, right? So there's a range there. But this framework, again, these are guardrails. It's a practical way to ensure everyone from the CEO to individual PMs understand how their decisions connect to the bigger picture. One of the main reasons I think I've experienced, and I'm sure many of you have experienced and heard, is when things are going in the wrong direction, it's often because of the misalignment here. People, product people and their teams don't know why they're working on something, how it helps the company, and how it helps the customer. Sometimes you're just being told, we need to do this by this date. And the more we move in that sort of direction, the less strategic we are. All right. Enough theory. Let's walk through a strategy for a fictional company that I've created called Victory Analytics. Victory Analytics is a sports tech company that is carving out its space in the football data and analytics market. Now, with this, I'm trying to apply everything that we've just talked about and translate it into something concrete. All right, so let's take a look at Victory Analytics at a glance. They're generating data for 100 different football competitions. I should say, before we get really deep into this, basically, sports tech and data companies, they do a few things. They provide insights from statistics to teams or other customers, but primarily teams. And they can either do that using another company's data. Somebody has to generate data. This is for sure. This is not just available. So they're either using another company's data or they generate the data themselves. So at Huddle and previously StatsBomb, we generate our soccer data ourselves. I should say football. I should know the audience, so I will use football from now on. Okay, so for this example, we have Victory. They also generate their own data, and they do so for 100 football competitions, which is quite good. They have 46 clients, and those clients are in the top 5 of European football competitions. That suggests actually that they have some credibility, given their presence in those competitions. What do they offer? It's pretty straightforward. They offer 2 main products, a product called VStats, which is their data platform, and an accompanying API. So there are different kinds of user personas within these teams that they sell to. One is less maybe technical than the other. So an analyst would be happy with getting data from an API and doing whatever data analysis and data visualization themselves. For others, let's say a manager, having the visual dashboard of players and team performance and tendencies and so on, that's sort of what the VStats platform is. And finally, they're a financial snapshot. They have 2 million in annual recurring revenue. So they're generating meaningful revenue, but are still quite early in the stages of their growth journey. Okay, so what is their market position? If you look at this quite basic scatter plot, you can see that there is a clear strategic trade-off, at least in this phase of their life cycle. They've chosen to focus more on quality and depth over breadth of coverage. So we have depth of coverage on the x-axis and breadth of data coverage on the y. So just for clarification, when I say depth of data coverage, how much data is generated per match? I'll give a very basic example. If you're watching a football match, you see a pass and you see a reception, you could generate data off of that, and that's it. Pass, reception, and who did those things. If you go deeper, you generate pass, reception, who did those 2 events, where they did it, and what foot they did it with, or if they had the ball, right? That's what I mean by depth. Now, when you naturally go deeper, you take more time to generate that data. And so time is limited, obviously. So you cannot, without spending more money on your operations, hiring more people, or improving the efficiency of your data generation product, you have to collect less. You have to generate less data. if you're going to be that deep. Okay. So one thing that they do is they provide the deepest and highest quality, greater than 95% accurate data coverage in the market, which I know from experience in our industry is extraordinary. It is top. So they have deliberately positioned themselves on the depth end of the spectrum, as the orange dot shows, because they have deliberately said we have to be a player for these premier customers, those customers in the top European leagues. So they're essentially saying, if you want to know everything about the matches we cover, down to the smallest detail, we are your solution. And so this is a clear strategic choice. They're choosing to be exceptional at having the highest quality, highest and deepest quality data. That's their key value proposition, their distinctive separator. They're choosing to be that rather than average at many things. Okay, which the many things I'm going to get into as we move on, because they can do many other things at the same time. So how have they defined their winning aspiration? Their winning aspiration goes beyond just being a data provider. What they're painting is a picture of democratizing sports analytics, or a world where every sports team, from grassroots to professional, can harness the power of data to reach their full potential, which is quite bold considering their current focus on the top tier leagues. It's also quite broad, and it goes against what I said earlier. You can't be everything to everyone, which is still true, right? But at some point, you would like to be, if you're going to be a market leader. And so they've said that's where they want to be. We want to help all sports teams, whatever their level is. That's an aspiration, and it's meant to be something to look back to and push, right? But as you'll see as we go through the cascade, that there have to be clear decisions about when and who and when. Like, when do we go for smaller teams? When do we go for youth teams? It has to make sense. If you now we look at their mission statement, it reveals an interesting tension with this broader vision. They are committing to best quality data, which we know from their current position means choosing depth over breadth. And so this reflects a challenge of balancing that ambitious vision with the current capabilities in their positions. But they are saying, we want to have the best quality data. This is going to separate us, because without good quality data, teams can't make winning decisions. This is a clear bet and a clear way about how they're going to go about things. All right. Now, in the word winning in their mission is really useful in this sports context, because again, they're not just selling data. They are positioning themselves to be a partner in their client's success. They're not a vendor of stats. They're not a vendor of statistics. They are a partner in their client's success, which is a more sticky proposition. Okay, so now let's outline their company strategy and how it connects to what we just saw. They have three objectives, and they tell an interesting story about where this company sees its growth path. So their first objective, it basically emphasizes on their current strength, which is dominating the elite European football market, where they already have those 46 clients, which makes sense. It's where the biggest budgets are, and it's where their high quality data offering will make the most difference. A lower tier team, they don't necessarily have the analysts on staff to be able to actually say this is poor quality data. So you could get away with having poor quality data. Now look at the second objective, signing teams from lower competitions. Okay, so there is a growth strategy here. And this is their first step toward that broader vision we just saw. We'll get into specific which lower competitions in another slide, because that's an important decision too. There's a big difference between lower competitions in Europe and lower competitions in South America, for example. And then third, diversifying revenue by entering a new sport, American football, which connects right back to the vision as being a partner in winning for any sports team, right? Any means any. It could be in basketball, but they're not doing basketball. So again, it's a deliberate choice, but there is still a connection to their winning aspiration. Okay, so further looking at a snapshot here, in their top leagues, where they already have a good presence, they're planning to go deeper with new offerings. So now these clients, as we mentioned, they have bigger budgets, they have more data savvy user personas, and they can leverage the high quality data to create more value for these premium customers. This is the bet, right? So they want to grow in EPL, Bundesliga, La Liga, and so on with new offerings. This is how they plan to grow. Now, if we look at their approach to second tier leagues, it's not just about entering these markets, it's about entering them, but with a streamlined offering. So they're essentially saying, we will give you our core capabilities, which is the essential insights, but not the full suite, right? Unless, of course, that they want to. But they're being specific about the offering to these smaller teams that fits their budget, right? So they understand what they can and can't pay. This allows them to meet the data quality standards that they've talked about while making the solution accessible to teams with smaller budgets. So just practically speaking, they could have access to competition analysis, player analysis, but for example, they wouldn't have access to some of the tools like player comparison tools, which are really leveraging some more advanced machine learning algorithms, right? So how does that translate into a product strategy? Let's first start with football before we go into the American football part. So for their premium market, the top leagues, they're saying we are going to have superior data for game analysis and recruiting. How? We are going to offer new tracking data on our VStats platform. If you don't know what tracking data is, basically, if you watch a football match, whatever the technology is, tracking CV, computer vision, or either with wearables, collects data for each player at every second. It collects location data for every second of the game. So you, as a consumer of this data, could see the formations easily. You can know where every player was at every second of the match. Plus, there are metrics that can be derived from this. So if there's a pass, a long pass, and your left wing makes a sprint, we can get physical metrics. How fast did they run? Now we're really cooking. Now we're getting into like a lot of metrics that can really allow us to analyze a player and their capabilities, not just on the ball or within the game, but their physical attributes as well. So that's for the higher level teams. For the lower teams, they're not just offering a stripped down version of their premium product. Instead, they're giving these teams specific insights that will drive the most value for their limited budgets. Finally, they're investing in machine learning to automate data generation. Right. So if you're probably, most of you are unfamiliar. A lot of this data is generated by humans watching the match and entering data in whatever user experience is developed for them. With machine learning, we can make this more efficient, right? And this could be a key that unlocks everything else. So imagine if they could have the key with making data generation faster is that you have to maintain your data quality. So if you can maintain that you have 95% accuracy, you're still the best in the market, while reducing the costs to generate that data, then really you open doors to serve lower tiers with high level features, because they don't cost you as much. All right. So each of these moves reinforces their core strategy while pushing the boundaries of their capabilities. Okay, now where to play here in American football? They are thinking about this strategically in that they could just jump into what's called the National Football League in the United States, which is the professional league, but they're not going to do that. There's a lot of competition there. The league itself provides products that give data and analytics. So they have decided that they are going to target the richest college football conference, which is called the Southeastern Conference, or I will just say SEC for short, which is really, I went to university in one of these universities, in one of these universities, one of these conferences in the SEC, and really they are professional football in college uniforms. Basically, they have $100 million budgets. Their facilities are amazing, and they are paying a lot of money to win. So here, this company is trying to plan to leverage their reputation, but they're in a different sport. Will that work? It's very risky. They're betting that their proven ability to handle complex sports data for teams in the Premier League and La Liga and so on gives them credibility. Like I said, this is a very risky bet. It's probably the riskiest in their strategy. But if it works, it has a lot of upside, and will give them a foot in the door for a new sport and new revenue. So the key phrase here that I've highlighted is filling unmet needs. So there are players in this space that are established. They are not trying to compete head on with those established players. What they're trying to do is look for gaps in the market where their expertise in deep data analytics could solve problems that others haven't. So it's quite focused. All right. So they're not going to try to replicate their entire European football offering, but they're going to put a wedge, which is what I was talking about earlier on the football side in American football. Physical metrics that come from tracking data, how fast they accelerate, what is their top speed. This is really something, I mean, even today in the real world, is key for analyzing players' athleticism. And there is enough data and about athletic players that they have a higher probability that you can teach them some of the sports skills if they're lacking in those areas. So by leading with tracking data, they're addressing a clear, immediate need that the coaches and the teams understand. And so they have a motto here. They're saying, come for the tracking, stay for the events. So they're not going to build the whole data generation pipeline. They're just going to do the tracking. They don't need to collect who did the pass, who did the catch, all of this stuff. They don't need to generate this in the beginning. So it's quite focused. By doing this, they can get their foot in the door, reduce their risk, and they have defined what they will do, which is provide the tracking data, physical metrics, and what they won't do. Provide event type data. This is actually, I don't get in trouble for this stuff, but this is from our American football product. This is what tracking data actually looks like. And this is not done with wearables, actually. This is done with computer vision, where with a computer vision model, machine learning algorithms, and human data annotators, we can generate this kind of data that shows how they moved, and obviously who moved where. All right. Now we can put it all together. And I know I'm running a little over on time, but we're close to wrapping up. This is the one that you want to pay most attention to. So if we look at the complete strategy stack for this fictional company, Victory, we can see how each level reinforces the others in a coherent plan for growth. Now, again, this I'm not saying that this will 100% work, but I have walked you through how I've thought about it and made deliberate choices and bets based on as much data and insights as possible to reach these conclusions that I think ultimately have the highest probability to succeed. And that's ultimately what we're going for. Again, that boils down to that first slide I showed you about what strategy is about. So their objectives create a fork with 3 prongs. Number 1, dominate their core market in top European football. Number 2, expand downward to lower tiers, and sign teams from lower competitions. 3, find new revenue streams in a new vertical. All right. These are their objectives that are tied to their company strategy, product strategy, and the outlook for this is like, let's say the next 2 years. If this isn't working after a year or after they've released and given and put these products and capabilities into the hands of customers, this should immediately be reassessed. Okay, so in their where to play for each of these, they're not just listing markets, but they're specifying how they'll approach each one differently. So premium offerings for top leagues, right? The EPL, Bundesliga, La Liga, and so on, with new offerings, the tracking that we mentioned. We will offer streamlined solutions for lower tiers at budgets that they can afford, and a focused entry into a new sport, American football. Now, it's in the how to win layer where we see the execution taking shape, like the initiatives that we are going to do. You can call them epics even, which we'll get to in the next slide. Notice how they're using tracking data as both a premium feature in the first column for the top European football clubs and as an entry point into American football. Although those two data generation workflows are different, there is a layer there that connects them. So they're trying to basically pool the cost of that technology into these 2 initiatives and have those 2 initiatives share some of the costs. So an effective strategy here will try to be intentional and being complementary with each part and amplifying the others. And so you see that with the tracking MVP and the tracking data. So this is a bonus slide showing a piece or a snapshot of the roadmap of how we can take one of the initiatives from how to win, right? The execution layer, and break it down into a now, next, later roadmap. So first, they need to build out the data generation capabilities and generate data to be able to publish it into the platform vStats. These are very high level, very, very high level epics, just to illustrate the point though. Then after that, they can update their API accordingly, right? So let's say this is the next 3 months now. We build the core tracking feature. We have to build the tracking backend architecture so we can have a robust data pipeline and so on. Then we can deliver it to our front end capabilities and our API. And finally, later, as a delighter, we can add, as I showed you, the tracking animations to vStats. So I hope I was able to, using this case of Victory Analytics, give you a practical example of what the essentials of strategy are, how they interact with each other from the vision, right? The long term that you see, where you want to get to, down to the product strategy and executing on that product strategy in your roadmap. Thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure, really, and we're ready for questions now. I think I'll stop sharing so
Amazing.
I can see you. But if you want to scan this, I'll just keep this up briefly. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and the other socials, and my newsletter. If you have not subscribed and you're sort of interested in these kind of topics, I write about them there. Thanks again.
All right, Yahya, thank you very much. That was really interesting, and I would also thank you for teaching us baseball. I always hear these terms and I don't understand what they mean. So that was good. Okay, I enjoyed this very much. I will be the last to ask maybe. So if you guys want to ask question, you have to option either you can like raise your hand or you can write in the Q&A section or in the chat. All right, so we can start with Nisma. I think she had a question to ask.
Hi, Yahya. Thanks for the session. Informative as usual. Thank you. And thanks for having the topic of strategy, which we may find it somehow confusing, somehow hard to link between the strategy and the tactics. But thanks to you, you have make it easy, alhamdulillah, and you link it all together. My question is, step before creating the strategy, how those CEOs and business people witness the market to find a gap? How do they usually find a gap, find the winning area? It's all through witnessing, reading reports. How they do that?
Oh, well, thank you, Nisma, and as always, it's great to see you again. I think from talking to people and also my experience, they either have researched, but more often than not, it's from working in the industry themselves, right? And so I can go back to the very beginnings of StatsBomb company. There was an Egyptian data generation company for football called Arcom, and it was acquired by StatsBomb. And its founders were already, I guess, super fans of football, but they were interested in data. So what did they do? they first looked at what is being offered in the market, right? So you have some big players. You look at the data itself, and they realized this isn't that good. We can do better. So you have that sort of light bulb go off, and you see that there's a gap. And that's what they saw. So when they saw that, they created with open source tools like their very first data generation pipeline. So literally the front end is something that is still available today as an open source tool that you can tailor it to say, okay, I want to make a user experience where if I'm watching a football match, I can collect these data points in a certain way. And that's what they did. And through that sort of initial experience and trial and error, they developed something that was good. That then they looked at their own data that they generated and they compared it with a market leader who has, of course, the distribution and the brand awareness and all of that stuff, but they still had a better product. So they realized they had an opportunity there. Now, how to grow is like the that's the challenge, right? How do you go from okay, we have something here to being able to compete? And that's where, over time, after refining their product and doing some marketing and so on, they ended up getting acquired actually quite quickly by StatsBomb, which was at the time UK based and had a footprint and had a following and more brand awareness. But just going back to my original point, usually comes from experience with a pain that you have had or you have witnessed in an industry from customers that they've had, and you ultimately try to find those gaps and opportunities and find ways to solve it yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Yahya.
Thanks, Yahya. Thank you, Nisma. All right. Any other question you have, guys? Two options. Either raise your hand. If you don't want, you can put it on the chat or the QA question part. You have... Okay, until someone asks a question, I have so many questions to ask Yahya, but let me start with one. I don't want to say we want to call out names, but I don't know, let's say based in our region, can you, I don't know, it might be like also, it needs some thinking, but you can let me know. Can we like identify from an outside, this company is having a good strategy, this company is going with no strategy. You know what I mean? Like, can you tell?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite companies is Breadfast, هنا في مصر.
Yeah.
I remember I was just launching my startup. It was an ad tech startup actually based in Amman, Controlcast. And at the time, I was in the Rise Up conference in Cairo. And just a brief intro, basically it was a digital out-of-screen marketplace where you have screens across the city, and we have streamlined this process. So if you're really a small to medium business who really have been boxed out of that market, you can't afford a billboard for a month, you can advertise on a screen, and you set your budget, and that ad will go live pretty much immediately or whenever you choose. I was walking around with a screen on my back, and you have people still trying to crack this market, which is a very difficult one. I was walking around with a screen on my back, and I had ads on it. And I came across Breadfast, and they had bread. And I looked at them, and I was like, "How is this tech?" But at the time, I was quite blind to what they were trying to do. And if you remember how much I emphasized on focus, they're not about bread only, right? They started with bread, and they saw a gap how to get good quality عيش بلدي and some other categories, but they didn't really have that many offerings. Get it to you like on demand or quick delivery. I wouldn't say quick delivery, regular delivery. There wasn't really ovens that are facilitating that. So they found a gap, and they started with that one main product. At the time, I dismissed them. I was like, this is too basic. There isn't a large enough market for this. How could a VC invest in something like this? But that was me being ignorant, right? Because they had a vision, and their vision went beyond bread. So they expanded with more product offerings with baked goods. They nailed down their user experience and their customer experience, and the quality of their products were good. Over time, they expanded to different products to the point where now they are competing with, Talabat and InstaShop and others, and all kinds of products. They didn't stop there. They did something I didn't even expect. They went into brick and mortar cafes or coffee shops in locations, which serves as another line of revenue. It sure serves as key brand awareness. And so you can see it, like in hindsight, you can see that what they started with, a small gap of getting fresh, good quality bread quickly to your door, they leveraged that into a humongous e-commerce, and then turned that into even a physical footprint. So nobody said strategy is hard or easy. It's hard. The key is to, like I said, and I wish I was talking to myself back in the day, really, really find that pain point or opportunity that really people want, right? And then we can go into, well, how do you test that, and so on, and that gets into what the incubators can teach you, or people who are familiar with starting up startups, testing and being lean and iterating and really validating before throwing a bunch of money and cost at a problem.
Okay, thank you, Yahya, for this. But what about the other way around? Is there a way to know like a no strategy? Yani what amplifies an example of no strategy? A company is going with no strategy, even if we didn't mention names, but yani, like how does that look for like an outsider?
Okay, so I think these days you find a lot of companies are trying to infuse AI, specifically generative AI, into their offerings. Whether or not they've really nailed down like the use case for it. Some of these companies have done a decent job of it. I can think of Beirut, for example. They have a pretty decent chatbot experience that leverages AI to actually allow you to do some data analysis on whatever's listed on their platform. But to get to that point to where you add that and it becomes part of your strategy for the next year, you need to really nail down what problem is being solved. So I'll give you another example from my industry. A lot of people think, okay, for players or analyzing teams, what if we created a generative AI chatbot where I can ask it in natural language, please compare Mohamed Salah to whoever over the last 10 games. Is that useful? Will it produce high quality data? Remember, if you're a data company, you rely on that. That is part of your brand name. So if your chatbot is producing errors, you have a problem, right? Even though you think that there's a problem of that you're solving of accessibility, right? You're making it more accessible. You could be creating another problem. So I see this a lot lately, and it's something that a lot of companies have to be careful with in terms of just including it because everybody's doing it. This is the trend, and they think that the customer expects you to do it because if you're not, well, you're not keeping up, right? And I'm going to go to somebody else who has this.
Okay, thank you, Yahya. Okay, I'm gonna open up again. I don't know if anyone have any question. You can raise your hand. You can write on the chat. If also questions, comments, feedback, etc. Okay, seems that there's not a lot of question. Then I'll come back to my. Okay, George. Go ahead, George.
Hey guys, I just had an inquiry about that strategy thing that I think on the micro level or on the individual level, especially for entry level PMs and even sometimes mid level ones, you're not actually the one who's in pure charge or who's within their authority lies the strategy. And so at the end of the day, there's something from that's cascaded from some high levels, either from the product team or from the product head in an ideal world, I can say, or maybe from the business in many other cases. So how can an individual contribute to that? Is it just like raising some ideas or so, or that would be considered as resistance for the flow that's going on? I'm talking about the case where there is a strategy that's not in a way aligning with the standards or with what Yahya was actually proposing, or in the case where I think it's common for most of the people where it's just the business driving or the competition driving things forward. And so for an individual, especially in early stages, how can the contribution be done in that case?
Yeah, this is a good question. Something I think we've all faced. The key for PMs in working in top-down environments is to try to get into position where you can influence. So you have to put yourself out there somehow. Let's take the example of you see something in the strategy that you believe is not a good bet. What should you do? You will not get far if you speak to the layer above you or to the management and just say that opinion. You have to create a pitch or a business case or an alternative, right? So what is better than this? Because like we said, strategy is making deliberate choices about what to do and what not to do. So if we're not going to do that, what are we going to do to achieve the same objective or one of our objectives if it's not the same? And this is where you have to get good at creating business cases, which requires a good amount of research. This is actually skills that startup founders need to have to address their markets, their segments, all of those questions that we were talking about. Where to play, how to win, who are you going to target. That's a lot easier, obviously, if you have internal data than it is with a fresh startup. But you have to have something concrete to share with those people to be able to influence their decisions. And so invest in sort of those skills and pitching, because ultimately that's what it is. So if you're going to create a document or something of that source, lay it out at the very beginning, TLDR, too long didn't read. We need to do this and not this because of this. And it better connect to some kind of financial goal as well, because that is really what moves the needle more than anything. So although there might be some other metrics that you want to influence that are layered underneath revenue, If you can connect it directly to, well, we have a better probability of increasing revenue if we do this instead of that, then you're going to have a higher chance of succeeding with your case and your pitch.
I think this can perfectly be done maybe using a product metric tree that's translating the feature itself or the KPI or the one metric that matters in that case to the top line as revenue, which can translate into tangible business value, I think.
Yes, yeah, exactly, 100%. In my work, I have two North Star metrics. I work on the data generation tooling for the football data. So it's the quality of the data, which is I mentioned like that 95%, and also the speed where we can generate the data. And usually there's a tension. If you go faster, sometimes you sacrifice quality. If you slow down to validate every data point, you sacrifice speed. But if you can translate that, okay, we're going to go faster by 15% without affecting data, and here's how. There's a cost savings to that. For every hour that we don't spend generating data, we're saving money on the tech, and we're saving money on the operations. So yeah.
Thanks, yeah.
Nisma, okay, you can go ahead again.
Just one more question, Yahya. What's your, tips to start, number one, understanding the different terms and frameworks of strategy? Number two, is there anything that I can do to master strategy creation rather than experimenting it, creating something and testing it?
Okay, so in terms of learning, I guess the terms and definitions, there are a good number of books that you can read. Playing to Win. It's an older book by Roger L. Martin, but I still find it really, really useful. There's another book called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, The Difference and Why It Matters by Richard Rumelt that I like as well. I think both of these will help you with that. Can you repeat the second question?
To master the strategy, yani. For example, we can see in the market people who are known for strategists. How to take that path? How did they do that? Is it, for example, if I'm planning to have my own business or test an idea, the only way is to chat about the strategy with experts or to just test it?
So, yeah, that's a good question. And I think I was trying to address that with the framework that I presented. If you are new to something, using a framework provides guardrails and a mental model for you in kind of in a checklist fashion. So if you are going to use this, you're going to start a startup, okay? You could use this, right, as a mental model to think about your strategy, right? So you need to answer those questions. What is our winning aspiration? Where do we play? How do we win? And what are we going to be really, really, really good at, better than everybody else? Like our one differentiator. And there are 101 ways, like these same questions are asked and answered in different frameworks, right? But ultimately, they boil down to this same thing. Are you able to focus in on uh, where your geo is, who your customer segments are? Like really focus. Like you have solid user personas. You're doing an ed tech, so it's a parent, it's a mom, hatta. It's a mom that doesn't have a lot of time, and let's say your ed tech is a tutoring service. Um, they need to find quality tutors quickly, and since your user is like moms, it needs to pass the mom test. If you've read that book, like it needs to be super easy to use, right? So that they can navigate whatever marketplace you have and find what they're looking for. These questions will help you get to that point, and refine your strategy. And if you're not answering these questions, then you can then quickly identify, or if you're not answering them well enough, you should review back and write it down. If you really are new to strategy, document this clearly, and then review back and say, am I answering these focused enough? And if not, then go back and do the exercise again.
Mhm.
It really is experience and practice and seeing how your choices play out in the market, right? And learning from those. So these frameworks and these guardrails and these mental models help get you to the point where you feel comfortable about
Mhm.
the choices that you're making because you have thought about it. There's data behind it to a certain extent, and you have intentionality about it. It's not
Mhm.
just, oh, this is like this Gen AI trend is great, and we need to add it into our product, otherwise we're going to get left behind. That you know, there's an intentionality to understanding why you need to do that, who it helps, um, and long term, like how else does it fit with your user experience and your core offerings. That is the point. So if you have zero experience or beginner experience, use these types of frameworks and mental models to guide you.
Mhm. Thank you, Yahya.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question also from Hasan that I will read and then I'll add to it as well. So he's saying, inspired by George's question, for a startup with no clear strategy, or they say let's do everything for everyone mentality, how can a PM shift the needle towards clarifying things and narrowing the focus?
Yeah. So this is similar. Yeah, exactly. This is quite similar to George's question. How confrontational do you want to be with the founders? Um, no. Uh, Again, there are reasons why founders may adopt a certain strategy that might not be founded in like solid reasoning, or might not be backed by whether enough data or even data informed. There is the gap there, right? The best that you can do is fill that gap with what they are not seeing. So if you are seeing it, then present it in a way that influences and persuades them that they are going to lose. We are more than winning. This is an interesting point. More than winning, we are more averse to losing, right? So that's another technique you can add in your pitch or your business case. That the current direction would be a loser. This direction has a better chance of winning. And again, it's the same way. So you have to have an alternative, and that's usually presented best with a business case, a solid one.
Great. And my follow-up was, is building lots of things and see what sticks a strategy? Or you know what I mean? Like, because that also, like we're gonna build this and this and this, and it's, it happens and say, let's see what sticks, and then based on that, we're gonna. Is that a strategy by itself?
That's kind of like the um, build fast and break things type. Well, how much money do you have? Like,
Mm,
how much is it going to cost to do that? All of these things are relative.
yeah.
That's sort of that's not a strategy, right? Because you don't have a winning aspiration. You are discovering, right?
Mm,
Which is fine. You are just in a different stage. You haven't reached the point where you have a strategy yet. So if you are discovering gaps in the market or potential opportunities, and you can afford, which these days it's much easier and doesn't cost as much to create MVPs to learn from, which is my definition. Like that's the main point of your MVP is to learn if there is something worth pursuing here. Then if you learn something, then you can start to form and answer those questions that I mentioned in the presentation. But just just building different things and seeing how they go. Let me ask you a question before I wrap up my answer to this. Are we talking about, you know, a scale up, or or a startup that is bootstrapped and they're just trying to figure things out?
Yeah, and we can have answer for both if
Yeah.
they're different. That would be great.
Right. So, let's take the example of a scale up. If I hate saying the word right, but if you're doing a product as efficiently as you can, you do want to have sort of this iterate, test, learn mindset, right? But you still need that intentionality for it. So you need to understand why why you want to test. So let me, it's always better to have a concrete example. Let's say we want to add in our VStats tool that I was talking about. We want to add a drawing tool, right? We don't know yet if it's going to be adopted, but we've heard through uh, you know, user interviews and ad hoc qualitative data from conferences and so forth that, wow, it would really be great to be able to draw on the images and create our own visuals. Okay. So you, if you're in that situation, you can first, before investing, go back into your strategy stack and see if it aligns with all of those phases, right? Does this help them win? Does it help them make better decisions and so forth? And if it aligns there and you have enough information there to make a bet, then yeah, iterate and start small on it. But you've done the homework. You've done the discovery to the point where it's not a shot in the dark bet. And so in that sense, it makes sense. But for a startup, that's if you don't have a direction in the first place, then you're trying to find a direction. So I think my previous answer covers that you're trying to find a direction. So you don't have a strategy yet. You're trying to find a problem to solve. And so that's fine.
Amazing. Thank you, Yahya. I'll leave it for the last question. If anyone has a burning question, write it, raise your hand, anything. If not, then we can start to wrap up. Okay. Yahya, I really enjoyed this 2 hours, and it was really amazing. Thank you very much for the presentation and the answering of the questions. And as Yahya mentioned, you can follow him on the social. And for us as a product folks, I mentioned to you the Slack community and the LinkedIn. We're happy to have you there. We have a monthly events, whether online or offline. And we have a community as well to interact with product leaders and managers in Jordan, Saudi, Egypt, UAE, across the Arab world. So you're more than welcome to join us there. The link is on the chat. And yeah, thank you very much, Yahya, and thanks everyone for attending. And see you on the next one, inshallah.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you, product host, and thank you for attending, and thank you for allowing me to speak in English and not stumble all over the place. Arabic next time, maybe I'll try to come to where you are and try it in Arabic. Thank you.
No, بالعكس, it was great. Thank you very much, Yahya. Much appreciated. Have a good day, guys. Thank you. Salam.